I was a little like, I don't know if I'm going to do this with my life. And Deadwood is a turning point for me because I was like, oh, you can tell stories that are complicated and interesting, and you don't have to die in the process. The most important thing you bring to your storytelling is you, your experiences, your aesthetic, your emotions. So, literally, the first night of my first job, I pretty much got the contact that led to my second job.
And that's how
So,
easy it is, folks. All you
Yeah,
need to
exactly.
do. Hey everyone, I'm Rafi Salem back with Manhattan Edit Workshops, talking MEWShop. Today, incredible special guest, Mark Hartzell. If you're going to spell it, though, it's going to be Hartzell. So, Hartzell. And as always, Josh Apter and Jason Banky, thank you very much for being around. Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit about Manhattan Edit Workshop, introduce Jason, Jason, introduce Mark,
All
and
right.
roll.
I will do it. Well, if nothing else, you can come to Manhattan at Workshop to get out of the heat. It is so cold in here that I was like, do I wear a jacket on the podcast in July? It's you could hang meat in this place. It's so cold. But we've been doing editing classes for over 20 years. My favorite of which is the 6-week Art of Editing Intensive. So it's really a boot camp for aspiring editors. We do a lot of history and aesthetics work, talk about comedy, documentary, short form, narrative, and we really spend a lot of time taking a deep dive into all of these different styles of editing. A lot of the why as much as the how. So it's a technical class, but it's also like, sort of a film theory class too, which is great. And I can hear them. You probably can't, but I can hear them going on in there right now. And I'll let Jason go into the other stuff that we do. But these conversations are, sort of a thrill for me because we get to focus on that. We get to talk about how someone started a career and rose in the ranks, and what sort of stuff they love doing, and how they, it's always great to have these conversations. And that's I'm not saying that's why I do it, but certainly makes it worthwhile. Jason, what are your thoughts today?
It's hot. My children are crazy, but yeah, these are great conversations, and we've had Mark in as a artist in residence for that program you're talking about, the 6-week intensive, and um, you know, we like to talk to people that we've had in the class because, like, obviously we reached out to you because we thought your work and your history and stuff like that and your path was great, but it's great to talk with the folks that have been in that class because we kind of could go deeper into it and find out like the process because applications are applications, but what's really important is what's going on inside of your brain and your relationships with who you work with and all that kind of stuff. So could you like I know Josh, when you were talking about Deadwood and you were an assistant for a long time on that. What was your path? Like, did you think you were going to do something like this when you were going through middle school, high school, that kind of stuff, or did you just like fall into this? Like, how did you get your start?
that's a good question. Yeah, I thought I was going to be a writer of some sort. I didn't know specifically what, but I went to University of California, Riverside, got a bachelor's in creative writing and English with an emphasis in film studies, and then went to Loyola Marymount for their communication arts program in screenwriting. And they were like, you have to take a couple prereqs, you have to take a directing class, which I enjoyed. You have to take an editing class. And I was like, what a waste of what? Why would you make me do that? And took the editing class and had a great time and really enjoyed it and discovered I may have a knack for it and ended up editing a bunch of other students' work and some of their senior thesis projects, and then applied for the American Cinema Editors ACE internship. And, didn't think I got it, and I got it. And there's the family tree of my career goes right from the ACE internship to my first um big job. It's all connected. This is the, always whatever the experience is or the people you're meeting are, these are connections because all the connections lead to other connections. At least, they used to, but that's a conversation for later. Um, it sort of rolls forward from there.
Should we
Um,
give a shout out to Jenny McCormick real quick for
oh, of
Ace?
course, every day. Wait, praise her. Jenny McCormick is the executive director of ACE, and she is amazing. And her first year in ACE, I think, was my year as an intern. So we started at the same time.
Wow. That's good. So wait, does that mean that you were editing pre-digital? Because she's been around for a while, right? Nah, it couldn't have been. It couldn't have been
It's
that long ago.
it's digital. At Loyola, they did make me do the upright moviola Gunsmoke project on I guess that'd be 16 millimeter film on a moviola.
Hmm.
So I did edit. That's my touching film experience. And then during my internship, I got to be in one cutting room of a movie called, is it The Astronaut's Wife? It was not a super successful film. Johnny Depp, Charlize Theron. Because it was that time period, there was an Avid assistant and there was a film assistant because they were shooting film. They were processing and screening dailies in the cutting room, film, and then they would telecine and then move to digital. But you had to have both working at the same time. This is before, I guess, before you had a DI, and
Right.
then there was that time period where your digital intermediate would then you could shoot out film from that you can still do now, but I don't know how often it gets done. Now we project digitally.
That's pretty wild. I actually, somewhere behind me is Norm Holland's Film Editing Room Handbook, which was like, it was just basically the book. It was like a Mr. Boston's guide for bartenders, but for editing, right? So it was, I mean, I don't know, I'm aging myself, but
Hey,
glad you
can't
didn't
say
have to go through it too much.
I can't say enough nice things about Norm Holland either.
Yeah, no, really great guy. We talked to him a number of times, but it strikes me that, editing is writing.
Yeah,
Writing is editing,
it
and
is,
rewriting is editing. And like there's so much interconnected between those two disciplines.
and writing is rewriting. Like that's the thing. Like rarely do you just start like, oh, I wrote this thing, and that's, I mean, yes, it does happen, but writing is rewriting, editing is rewriting, and it's all under the umbrella of storytelling. So yeah, I was drawn towards storytelling, and this is where I wound up going, not entirely intentionally from the beginning, but I got there.
When you
Yeah,
say you went straight from your internship to your first job, what
No,
was it? uh, Were people fighting over you? Like, oh,
no,
let's
not.
grab him. Let's.
How did this one go? So after the internship, I got two opportunities presented themselves, and it's always a question of if I picked the right one. One was to be the PA on an HBO film, and my job was going to be going to pick up literal film from the airport, from the fish flight from Vancouver, getting lunch, and then I would have the opportunity to meet the assistant and get to know them that way. Or, and that was probably a good choice. And a lot of people were like, you should take the HBO film, be the PA. The other one was I could be an assistant, an actual assistant editor for this PBS docu reality series about entrepreneurship. And I was like, oh, but they're going to pay me more. I get to be the actual assistant. I get to work with the editors. I get to work with the Avid. I get to be more, I don't have to go to the airport and pick up film. And a lot of people were like, take the HBO thing, but I went for the assistant editor job, and it was working nights, which was, an experience. And my first night there, the guy I was replacing, as I was replacing somebody, he was sort of testing me to see what I knew. And he was like, oh, he's like, you already sort of learned how to, how to use Navid, and you're kind of tech savvy. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, great. When you're done here, call this woman. She's always hiring. And I was like, okay. So literally the first night of my first job, I pretty much got the contact that led to my second job.
amazing.
And that's how
So
easy it is, folks. All you
Yeah,
need to
exactly.
do.
there was a period I got the first job, got the second job was like a Cosgrove Muir Productions Unsolved Mysteries season 5 million. I mean, look, they're still making that show, I think, but it was like it had been on for 1,000 years. And but then after that, I think I had like a 4 month break for I couldn't find a job, and I was pounding the pavement, I was doing all the stuff. And my mom was like, you know, there's nothing wrong with going back to school and picking up a trade. And I was like, look, I don't think we're there yet. We might be there now, by the way, but I don't think we're there yet. But it was like, if this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And then there were two ACE interns. Then Eric Prezant was the other ACE intern. He called me. He was like, hey, we're working on this thing, and you should come work over here. And he's like, it's pretty chill. It's pretty great. Everybody's nice. The show is interesting. It's Chicken Soup for the Soul, the TV show. And I was like, sure, if there's a, yeah. And I went in and interviewed with this guy. This guy was a guy named Stephen Mark. Stephen Mark, to still, I mean, still to this day will joke, but he's like, when I die, it'll say, here lies Stephen Mark, who edited the pilot for the X-Files. He was the pilot guy for a good period of time. He did the pilots for X-Files, Millennium, Roswell, Smallville, Dark Angel, not credited as the Deadwood pilot, but it is 90% him. The original editor had a really good deal. There's one scene in there the original editor did, but they had upfront credit. So he's done a lot of these big shows, and that's the guy they put me with. And I worked on this little show that this is a show where nobody wanted to be. Nobody was going to stay there. As soon as you got a real job, you left. And his real job fell through. And I was like, he's not going to, he's not going to take me with him. And I worked with him for, half a year or something. And he left, and I was like, well, that was at least a good experience. And he called me up and he's like, hey, I have a pilot. Do you want to assist me on this pilot? And I was like, sure. And he's like, oh, the pilot's going to be over at a place called Lightstorm. And I was like, I've heard of Lightstorm. I think that's James Cameron's company. And that was the Dark Angel pilot. So literally, I had just gotten my union days and um assisted on what at the time was probably the most expensive broadcast television pilot that had been made. And I didn't 100% know what I was doing because I hadn't done it all yet. This is my first film show. This is my first heavy VFX show, heavy in air quotes for the time period. This is my first big budget, big broadcast thing. And there's one assistant, there's one editor, and off to war we
Wow.
went.
So do you fake it till you make it, or you just like you knew enough to learn
You
and you took notes? What'd you do?
you ask for help and you ask a lot of questions. And I was asking everybody I knew on the way in. I'm like, okay, they're shooting, I don't know, 3 perf 35. We're doing this. What do we need to know about this? If we're going to be doing visual effects this way, what do I need to know? What I discovered is a lot of people knew a lot of information. And even people at the high end of things didn't all know all the answers either. This is the fun part, is that it's sort of, it takes a village. So I learned enough to get through it and be successful enough. But again, you can answer a question with a question to get more information. And you have to have people you can reach out to be like, I don't know what this is. How do I solve this? And they'll be like, I know somebody, or let's look it up. I mean, now you have a lot more resources.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just got to ask questions.
Yeah, we had someone who
Amazing.
was saying like you can only ask, but I knew enough to know that I could only ask once. Because if I asked and I wasn't taking notes and I didn't get the answer down and I got it wrong and I had to ask again, I didn't want them saying, we already went over this. Like he was so very like concerned and like make sure that any question he asked, he only asked one time and
Yeah,
got
I
it
don't
down from there.
ever re-asked people, but I definitely was like, okay, I kind of understand that. I'm going to go ask someone else and get that information. And at that point, I could even take it up to producers and be like, hey, I think we're doing this way because this and this and this and this. And they would look at me and be like, okay, like, because they didn't 100% know either. So
Right.
I'm saying there's a problem with the hyperdrive, or I could start to be like the warp drive, the lithium crystals. They're like, that sounds good. Go, just keep moving forward.
Uh-huh. A lot of dilithium
Yeah.
in
Now,
post.
is that how you got onto Deadwood as an assistant from there?
There's a fork in the road where we had done 4 pilots in 4 years. It was Dark Angel, Smallville, Without a Trace, and Tarzan. And the four of those were directed by David Nutter pilots. And then after the Tarzan pilot, Steven was, oh, there's this weird show and it's a Western and you're going to have to drive up to Santa Clarita if you want it. And I was like, oh, okay. And the other one was an editor I had met on Chicken Soup, a guy named Mark Manos, really talented editor. And he was like, hey, I'm going on to this Tarzan show you were on. I already know you can cut. Why don't you come assist me? And we'll get you, we can get you moved up and we'll figure the whole thing out. And that was the fork in the road. And I was like, I think I'm supposed to go do the HBO show because it wasn't, it was still HBO, but it wasn't like you would think of it now. It was,
Right.
Sopranos was recently on the air or potentially was on the air. It was an odd time. And I remember going up to Santa Clarita to where we're shooting at Melody Ranch and watching the pilot. And the pilot had gone through a lot of permutations. And literally, like in the first scene, I was like, I can't tell if this is the past or the future. Is this a flash forward? Is this, what are we doing? And it was going to need some reshoots and re-editing. And I was like, I don't like Westerns, and I don't. And I was,
It's
but
on the record.
yeah, I not another, and it's not my first. I will watch them for educational historical purposes. But I was like, I think I'm supposed to go this way. Also, I should say around this time, Smallville, the series, the pilot, it was hard. The series was a disaster the first year in terms of post-production. And that was around a time where I was like, I think I'm supposed to not be doing this with my life. I think I'm supposed to leave Hollywood and move out of state and go become a something somewhere else. And I sort of hung in after that for a little while, but Smallville, like early on, was almost enough to break me just because I was working so many nights, so many weekends. This is sort of useful to hear now because we were in like a at turnaround was 8 hours then. It still is depending upon the show, but now it's more like 10. So for 4 months, I was at turnaround every day, working 7 days a week, except for the one day off every 21 days if you asked for it because they had to pay a penalty.
Wow.
We're like, oh, what time did you get here? I got here at 8. Great. Why don't you work till 11? We'll see you back here at 7 a.m. Okay. And it's a 30-minute drive there, 35-minute drive back. Great. Now you have 6 hours and 50 minutes to do whatever it is you are going to do that isn't being at work for
Wow.
months.
But at least you were getting paid like what, $400,000 per episode?
Sure.
Yeah.
Did it for the money.
It was it was a lot. And the post producer was a great guy named Tim Scanlon, and he started. I'm going to talk about this. He was like, I'm not going to shave until I get a day off. So he grew a crazy beard, and they eventually hired a second associate producer, a fourth assistant editor, a second PA, and then things got better at some point. But it was bad. And I was a little like, I don't know if I'm going to do this with my life. And Deadwood is a turning point for me because I was like, oh, you can make 12 episodes instead of 20. You can tell stories that are complicated and interesting, and you don't have to die in the process. Like I was, I was young, also in air quotes, but I was young enough to be like, oh, you don't have to be exhausted all the time and just falling up and unraveling, although sometimes you do. But I was like, it can be like this is an option. This is how this can be. And I remember literally telling David Milch somehow that this had like restored my faith in my career choices. And he was just like, he probably handed me some money or something. That was his
I,
way. That
I,
was
I
his way.
think in all of the people that we've interviewed, like I don't recall hearing as many horror stories. Jason, Josh, like that's a horror story.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some people, and it's just like it's hard. They get worked, and I know some people that um, their assistants, and they're so good at it that they kind of don't. There's a gate that's shut because their editor doesn't want to lose them, and so they keep them away from jobs where they can spread their wings. And I mean, look, there's every kind of story imaginable. More often than not, I think an editor wants their assistant to move up, and they want to mentor them, and it's all there is that sort of camaraderie, but there's always craziness. I mean,
Everything is
that's
relative. Everything is relative. On Lost in Space, the first season, things got crispy for a while. And another editor, I'm not going to say his name, but he's a really great editor, great guy, friend of mine. He was like, I've never had to work this hard. And we were at a part where we were in camera, done shooting, but in sort of the VFX, how can we elevate, fix, help us get there time? And we were working nights till maybe like 10, 11, couple, like, for a couple weeks. It was like, yeah, well, let's get together for a VFX meeting at like 3 or 4, go through all the shots, figure out if we're telling the story the right way. And he was like, I've never worked this much, never worked this hard. And I'm like, how many weekends have you done? And he was like, it's either one or none. So, but it was like, you get here at 9, you stay till 11 and it was that's or at 8. It's like it's a big day. These are long days. But I was like, "Yeah, you weren't at 8-hour turnaround 7 days a week for a month. Like there's it just depends. It's like, oh, I had the worst date ever. Did you? Did you were you it was the Silence of the Lambs? Did you have to like, put the lotion in the bucket, or how bad was the date? There's always going to be levels of how bad things can get.
Right.
So, and we're also trying to fix that. That's why turnaround now is 10 hours. I think it's 12 for production. We're at 10, I think, except there's an excuse for like first season shows or pilots. And again, that's where things are going to get terrible. But I've been on a first season show where the post producer is like, no, everybody, it's 10 hours. It's not. And they're still trying to make things so it's less horrible. And that's, we're in a world now where we can talk about, I can say mental health and nobody's going to come in with like a straitjacket. They're like, oh, let's talk about mental health.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
I remember I only ever cut features. And so it would be, they wanted to know that you were kind of, quote, good for it. Like there was your rate, but when things got intense and there were deadlines, like, would you be there? And it's like, well, what does that mean? I mean, honestly, like if you had to work through the night or you had to start work cranking out, you did it. I mean, at the time, you were the only person who could do it. So it wasn't like they'd be like, well, if you're not going to, I'm going to hire someone else. Like you were really, they just wanted to know that you were good for it. If something like, when it gets down, the shit hits the fan and there's a deadline approaching, are you going to leave and just clock out? Or are you going to, it's tough because there's that balance between like, well, I have a life too, and saying like, no, I'm part of the team. I'm going to own this as much as anybody else, even though I maybe don't at the end of the day, right?
I've been doing this for 27 years and I've only had to work like really crazy hours, I think 2 times when one of the times it was like I was there, the only person on the show who had to do it was there. I was the only person literally on a show. And it was like, you have to get this and this and this done really by tomorrow. And I was like, you should have told me this a week ago. And I think I worked for like, 27 hours, but I slept on the couch for a couple hours while
Right.
something was going off to tape or transcoding, and I had one other like 30 something hour day once. Those are the 2 times. And it's like, yeah, this isn't how this is not a good idea.
Right.
Um,
Temporarily, it's okay. But the work suffers too, by the way. You only have so many hours of good work in you a day before you're just starting to see spots and like it's just a waste. You're redoing it the
yeah,
next day anyway.
yeah, in the future at some point I'll be able to talk about some other experiences where I'll be like, yeah, like, this editor worked till that time and these other 2 editors came to me and were like, we're not doing that. And it was like, okay, we're not doing that. And we had to push back. But generally speaking now, there will be times on certain projects things go nuts. On feature, I've only done this one feature. Like a real theatrical big budget feature, and I was the second assistant. Um, but I know when big movies right now are coming and it's especially a big VFX one, there's a time period where it's just like you're mixing, you're also changing picture while you're mixing, and effects are still coming in and nobody's leaving. It's just you're just there and it's a mess probably. But it's not a you're not gonna do that for a year. That's gonna be a period of time.
Mark, you had said that you're a card-carrying union member, right? So, uh, how does it work in terms of industry-wide making someone, or I should say, making it known that someone has to stay, get this done through the night, through the weekend? So, is that, do you get paid overtime, or is it just is what it
You
is?
get overtime. I don't think I get overtime. There's probably a night premium maybe as an editor. As an editor, you get this, it's not a double the assistant rate, but it's an increase. But I'm more like a salaried employee. As your assistant has their deal, and their deal is going to be for a 45, 50 hour week. So there's maybe some built-in overtime. And when they go in overtime, the producer will have to get that approved most likely, and then it'll be like, yeah, we're sorry, this is what's happening, but you're going to go into a heavy penalty area where there's OT, and then you'll get your break and then you have to come back. So it will be crunchy for periods of time. I think on big projects, when I was at some point when we were doing like 7 days before previews on this movie I did called 21, where I was the second assistant, I think I was in Golden Time for a couple weeks at least, where I was like, oh, that's how much I'm making. Where until you get a break, you're in Golden Time, you're in double time, you're making double your rate, and you get that for that time. But I think it's just, this is the part of me that's like, what were you thinking when you did the ACE internship and you were on it was a David E. Kelly TV show called Chicago Hope, the medical show, and I was there for a week shadowing the assistant, meeting the editors, and they were locking and onlining an episode. And I was like, oh, this feels like cramming for finals. And they're like, yeah, that's kind of what it's like. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna, I stay up all night and, drink too much coffee and not sleep. And it was, kind of successful. I got through. And what I didn't think clearly was this is like cramming for finals every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or how often it was if you're on a show with that many up. It's like, that part I'm like, maybe you should have thought that one through. But there's a way to get the work done in a calm, sane manner. And then there's ways where it's going to get a little messy sometimes. And you're all in it together. It's not terrible unless it is. And look, there are probably shows that are awful. Um, but like you work till 11 sometimes, and then hopefully get the weekend or at least the one day off, and you come back, but it's not permanent. And that's sort of the way I always look at it is be like, okay, you're not married. This is not your spouse. This is not how the rest of your life is going to go. This is just how the next week, months are going to be. And then you can look forward to more Stockholm syndrome. Then you jump back in again.
Let's talk about art now. We've been
Sure.
talking about like the what's in the sausage for a half an hour, but let's jump ahead to Dune Prophecy seems
Mhm.
like more your speed than a Western, let's say, on the surface of things.
Yes.
What's it like to, I know the movies. How does this fit with the aesthetic, the philosophy? Is it really meant to be of a piece? Like it really just slots right in, or is this its own animal?
It is in universe. It is in the current cinematic Denis universe. It is a prequel that takes place 10,000 years before the birth of Paul Atreides. It's based on some of the latter books, not written by Frank Herbert, but written by Brian Herbert. And yeah, when they announced that this show is coming, I was like, God, I would love to at least get an interview on it. That would be great. And yeah, it's I enjoy watching a certain degree of sci-fi. Like I was a Star Trek kid. Like as a 5-year-old, I started watching the original series and reruns. But Dune, I remember watching the original David Lynch Dune and being like, I don't know what this is, but I'm here for it.
That's what
And
everybody said.
yeah, so yeah, Dune is more in my wheelhouse of what I would like to work on, except that you wind up feeling really attached to anything you work on because you're spending so much of your time and effort on it. And also, this is what I was telling to students at Manhattan at a workshop. I was like, the most important thing you bring to your storytelling is you. You're bringing your experiences, your aesthetic, your emotions, and your thought processes are coming there, and you're going to combine them with other people's. But it's that push and pull, or it's the like, oh, I have an idea. Oh, I have an idea. Oh, let's do. Oh, and then you start, working on an idea together, and it's going to be better than the sum of its parts. So, yeah, Dune Prophecy, Lost in Space, last that was, these are some things I've really loved working on. I've learned a lot about working on a big visual effects show. I've learned a lot about world building and working hand in hand with visual effects and trying to figure out how to help us do the right amount of storytelling. And then you run up against sort of walls and surprises to be like, can we do this? We don't have the asset for that, or we didn't scan the person wearing that outfit. Okay, well, what can we do? And then you start working things out together. But yeah, and again, like I've also done little tiny shows that some people have still watched, like Bunheads, Amy Sherman Palladino's ballerina show for ABC Family, and that was a great experience. But there were no spaceships and sandworms on that. Um, but yeah, Dune Prophecy was a lot of fun. I just wanted to be part of the experience. I just wanted to have an opportunity to be like I got to work on it. And it was a fun thing because I interviewed and they were like, you're in the running, and then they hired three other editors that the showrunner had already worked with to do the show. And I was like, well, I tried. And then the schedule was such they're like, if we brought in one editor to do one episode, that would make everything a lot better for everyone. And that they circled back and they're like, would you like to do one of the six episodes? And I was like, "Ah, absolutely." And that turned into one and a half because even then things got crispy enough that I did a co-edit with one of the other editors, Sarah C. Reeves. So I did episode 3 solo and then episode 5 as a co-edit. But if you look at the credits, and I was just doing like a social media push to try to get an Emmy nomination, it was like my assistant editor, Tim Cooper, got additional editor on both episodes. I think all the assistants got additional on all the episodes because it was a lot. It was a lot of film. There was a lot of work to do, and everybody sort of had to do all hands on deck and help a lot.
Did they shoot everything first, or were you getting like were each editor working at the same time? Like how did
Uh,
that like
I came on during production of episode 3. They were shooting blocks after the pilot, I think, or after. And then one had one direct. Well, the first episode had one director, second episode had one director, then 3 and 4 had one director, 5 and 6 had one director. So it became blocks, and that's where things get a little nuts sometimes with scheduling. Because on some shows, you'll do a block and you'll give one episode to one editor, one to the other. So you may not be getting dailies every day. Depends how long the shoot is. Marvel's Agent Carter shot in like I think a 14-day block-ish, 14, 15 days. So that's what, 7.5 days for your episode, but they would have one director do two and one editor did each one. So by the end of those 14 days, your episode is complete and you've done it and you move on towards your director's cut. On Monarch Legacy of Monsters, I would get one block as one editor. So I am currently working on two full episodes at the same time, and those we're shooting for, I don't even know how long we shot for. And um it's a lot of work. I just spoken about this. I was invited to NAB by Avid to talk about Dune and talk a little bit about my experience in episodic television. And I was explaining how it's interesting. People sometimes will be like, "Oh, you worked on True Blood, and that probably got so many shoot days. Got like 20 shoot days for an episode." I'd be like, "Yeah, sometimes." And they'd be like, you can you really do it in like can you do a schedule where it's like 6 or 7 day, a 7 day shoot?" And I'm like, "Yeah, if I gave you for 7 days, if I gave you a day of dailies, they shot I don't know, 1 to 3 hours of film a day. If I gave you 3 hours of film a day for 7 days to make a 42-minute episode, or I gave you 3 hours of film a day for 20 days to make a 50 or 55-minute, like 10-minute longer episode. Which one of those sounds like it's going to be more or less work? It's like, yeah, we had all that time, but you're still literally you're just going. And then you're still trying to get this whole thing together and make it make sense. And you've seen all the film, you've studied it all and put it together. And but people will still be like, "Oh, you got so much time." And I'm like, "No, it's actually easier to do something in less time with because there's less volume. It's the conveyor belt has less on it. And you're still making something that is similar in length. 40-minute show, hour-long show, that extra 20 minutes isn't gonna make or break it if you've tripled the volume of the film.
And during all this time, did you know Manhattan at a workshop? Jason, you had mentioned this before. How did you become an artist in residence?
I got Janet reached out to me and I had heard of it before and I've seen things mentioned in Ace Blasts, probably the Ace magazine, and I think I've spoken to a couple other editors who have done it too. So when you guys reached out and asked, I was like, absolutely, sure. Because I do a lot of mentorship in general. I do it through Ace. I do it in general, like when I'm somewhere and students reach out, and I will, right now the mentoring it's in a different area, but generally speaking, I will talk to virtually any editing student who's like, here's what I think I want to do with my life, and what do you think, or am I doing the right thing? Um, Literally just spoke with a mentee last week who's doing amazingly, who I met was a student who was visiting NAB 4 years ago. And yeah, is working for Marvel now, and there's a lot of really good opportunities and has been doing great. So, and I was like, you need to apply for the ACE internship. You have to. You have to do this. And her professor reached out to me, and he was like, she is the best editing student I've ever had. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. So yeah. So no, I had heard of you guys, and yeah, I jumped at the opportunity, and I had actually a really good time teaching my two classes.
That's great. I'm
Fantastic.
sure we loved having you. That's you got to watch some different cuts, give critiques, things like that. Because we were just talking about like it's always interesting to see when you give a group of people that, well, I don't know if you saw this because we were in the same footage in like one of the weeks, and then like they'll all cut it and they'll all screen it, and they're all just like it's like I never would have thought of that. I never would have thought of that. Oh my God, no, and there's like the idea share, sort of that like so the thing that happens when they all see each other's interpretations of the same stuff is really cool. You may have seen some overlap. I don't know. I don't know what you were screening in there, but I know they love getting your feedback. That's always
But
fun. Like it's
it
just
was
like, oh
great.
my God.
Reached out afterwards to thank me or be like, you blew my mind, but no, I was seeing a lot of things where there were like three different projects, and a lot of them were working on the same thing, and you could be
Mhm.
like, and one of the, I think I did tell them this because when I did the original um Gunsmoke Moviola project, the class I took at Loyola was like, here's the thing, let's do this free form. You have to tell us how you want to tell the story. You don't have to follow the script. You can try to tell this from a different character's point of view. Can
Mhm.
you adjust the point of view? Can you adjust the story? What can you do editorially? And so if all your students are cutting the same thing and they've all done, like, an exercise would be, hey, here's the script. Everyone cut the script. Great. Now go back and everybody come up with an idea to change it. What can you do with this? Can you tell this story that's like the good guy wins, the bad guy loses? Can you make it so the bad guy wins? Can you tell the story from the point of view of a third party who's in the scene and make it their experience? What can you do to shift point of view and take the viewer on a different journey editorially? And that's sort of an astounding thing, is what happens a lot in film and TV is you shoot what they wrote, and then it gets to us and people get other ideas down the road, and it's like, well, how can we tell this story now? How can we clarify this? We never intended this, but now we want to go down this road. What can we do with additional photography? What can we do with additional dialogue? What can we do with just re-editing the picture to make that feel like as if it was always there?
Integral, right? Like it has to feel like it was made that way from the beginning. I think right there, my one of my heroes. Which way am I pointing? There.
That way.
Cassavetes he'd cut it, he would recut the film from different characters' perspectives just to see what would happen, just to observe the change in the tone of the movie or the focus of the movie, to cut it for, Jenna Rollins' perspective or Peter Falk's perspective, or like, just it wasn't cut until it was cut from everybody's point of view. I'm getting that wrong, I'm sure. But it's very interesting to see how you can just change it. Or when you get there, you're like, oh, like Annie Hall, right? Like, boy, this is an interesting movie, but every time Dan Keaton's on screen, something's happening, and then turning it into a different movie. It's like, but that's the writing part. Getting back, so I guess we're coming full circle since we're kind of running out of time. But like, that's the aspect of the job of editing that is, it has, this the writer's discipline, which is what you were interested in to begin with.
Absolutely. Yeah, you could always take somebody and show them, like, the deleted scenes from Star Wars, because most people have seen that, and they'll be like, wait, this is how they introduced Luke? That's crazy. Or this is how, really? That? And you're like, yep. But then, the editor was like, nope.
Mhm.
So
Delete that.
so usually we go around it. So many more questions, Mark. What you're working on, and Josh, talking about the art. as opposed to the behind the scenes. But because we're out of time, Mark, if you could sum up somehow, if it's fine, you already gave some great takeaways. What would be your number one takeaway or number two to someone watching this right now, wants to get into the industry or how to rise up within the industry?
So we're in a little challenging time right now where the work volume has reduced. So what I've been saying to younger people right now is, if this is what you want to do, and this is 100% the only option, I want you to still come up with a plan B, because storytelling isn't going to go away, but the ease at which you could enter what we're going to call the legacy, because now I'm potentially a legacy editor, is different for now. We don't know where this is going to land, but to learn everything you can at this point about editing and storytelling, and that's by watching, by doing, by experimenting, by not being afraid to fail. And if the arts and storytelling is your true destination, to try to stay the course, and we're probably going to find out together where this is going, because it is all evolving right now, and things are not what they were like 3, 5, 7, 10, 20 years ago now, and we're going into a new area. And to also not be afraid of looking at other creative content and creative content creating.
Josh, Jason,
My
takeaways.
My takeaway, as usual, there's no right way to do this, and never have we heard the same story repeated in terms of how someone got their start and made their career, and now, is facing what's happening, which is another evolution when we don't know where it's going. But it's always, I think so, it's just, I guess the consistent things are that sort of thirst for that curiosity, right? It's like there's something about someone who succeeds here where it's like they want to understand, they want to know more, they want to, whether it's they want to explore the technology or the outer limits of like what could happen on a show and figuring all of that out, or like it's just getting to the core of the story they're trying to tell. It's like there's always that sort of that curiosity, that unending component of it. And is that a takeaway? Is that many takeaways? I don't know.
It's all good. Jason, takeaway, and tell us what's going on at the Manhattan Works.
I mean, to follow along, I mean, I think it's just, it seems like, don't get too comfortable and keep growing, so that, like, keep your core of what you want to do. But, there's different ways now, mediums of ways to get out, like YouTube or whatever it may be. And I mean, at least that's what I'm seeing, is a shift in what the job is. You're saying legacy. I feel like it's just changing, and you have to stay on top of what the technology is and where things are moving. But other than that, we have classes coming up. Of course, we have color correction. We have the 6-week and editing classes and all kinds of Pro Tools and things like that coming out. And we have an event. I think it should be out by now, with the colors for feature films and television. So stay tuned for that.
All right. Mark Hartzell, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, please subscribe, like, comment, reach out. We've got a lot of classes and a lot of great things happening. Check it all out at MEWShop.com, MEWSHOP.com.
It's right behind your head. It's right there.
Oh, wait. Seriously. There. Wow. Incredible. So thank you again, Mark, Josh, Jason, and we'll see you all next time.